Hey there, coordinators! Many of you are going to be meeting with groups of people that are in very sensitive situations. They might have experienced some recent traumas, they may be fearful of the future, or they may worry about public exposure. Have no fear. I'm here to help prepare you for some delicate issues that may arise. Part of the beauty of our program method is its consistent recourse to the substance of the short stories, moving the spotlight of scrutiny away from personal histories and identities. Regardless, it can be a challenge in this context to respond to needs for confidentiality and to invite personal stories without triggering painful processes. As new coordinators, or perhaps seasoned coordinators who are approaching a new situation, you might feel unsure about how to honor the concerns of participants or how to navigate around difficult past experiences. Always remember that for people in stories gente y cuentos, flexibility is the name of the game. Your participants may be undocumented immigrants, for example, or victims of abuse. In such situations, you absolutely have the freedom to make accommodations. Now, I'm going to dive into a few specific areas and suggest some ways you might want to handle these sensitive matters. First, we'll address the topic of confidentiality by looking specifically at the program roster. In some settings, asking everyone to record their names on a piece of paper could be perceived as a bit threatening. If you sense this is the case, we suggest that you simply share the two purposes of the roster with your group. First, we need to keep track of how many participants are in each session for organizational record keeping. And second, we'd like to know the proper spelling of everyone's name for the certificates that are given out at the end of the program. It might be helpful to add that participants' full names are never ever shared with the public. Rosters stay in our small office, and we never need to disclose full names to anyone for any reason. In response to this information, your participants can choose to give first name only, initials, first name and last initial, whatever makes sense for them, and whatever they'd like to see on their certificate. And remember, certificates are in fact optional. Participants in general very much appreciate this component of the program, but if a person doesn't want his or her name associated with the facility, for instance, we must respect that decision. Please feel free to make that judgment call on your own. Now, let's dig into the topic of selecting stories and discussion questions. With discussion questions, there is certainly room for discretion. You may refer to our study guides for example questions that have been developed by literary scholars and used in a variety of settings. When it comes to selecting which work of literature you want to present, we encourage you to choose a wide variety of stories with varying themes and from an array of different authors. You may also screen your selections, keeping in mind what might be appropriate for the population you're working with. For example, some of the stories on our bibliography address trauma, and some don't. Some have to do with family and intimate relationships, and some don't. Our bibliography contains stories with a wide range of themes and literary approaches, and newer coordinators are often surprised by participants' willingness to discuss very sensitive topics as they arise in the stories. So, try not to be overly cautious as you choose the stories you want to present. When people are asked about a character's actions or the author's description of a setting, they may feel more comfortable exploring difficult topics than they would if they were asked these direct questions about their own decisions or relationships. At the same time, if you are in doubt about whether a story will feel threatening or confrontational to members of the group, you might want to err on the side of caution. Our collective experiences have shown that there are no rules about which stories or questions will work with which audiences. Remember, once you choose and get to know a story, you will rely on the methodology to guide your discussion, coming back again and again to the poetics, contrasts, tensions, shadows, and themes. When it comes to the personal experience part of the picture, some trial and error is called for. Just try and be sensitive to who's in the room. The participants' own stories can be drawn on and celebrated, but you want to be careful not to dwell too much on personal circumstances. The discussion will dance between literature and the lives of the participants. If you sense some potential triggers, just be supportive and circle back to the story, which should ground the discussion. Common feedback is that the program is therapeutic, and indeed, the literature and a supportive environment both tend toward this effect. The topics of confidentiality, story selection, and discussion dynamics are sensitive, important, and always worth exploring more deeply. If you have anything you'd like to add or have some concerns about other areas we haven't addressed, please share your thoughts with us and with other coordinators on our private blog, www.genteecuentos.wordpress.com. It is here that we can learn from each other, share our knowledge and experiences, and equip ourselves to better serve our participants. Well, that's all I have for you now. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping us connect more lives to literature, one short story at a time.